From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And for you during our first half hour, it's our annual year in review of extension programs and activities here in Kansas over the past year in the areas of agriculture, water resources, health, youth development, and community vitality. K-State's Gregg Hadley will join us for that. And some of the things he'll single out: extension work in farm financial mediation, irrigation technology advances, developing a culture of health in Kansas communities, and expanding the 4-H experience to reach an ever greater number of youth. Gregg will be mic side with us in just a moment. And of course, this being a Wednesday, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven will check in with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. That and more ahead on this Agriculture Today. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. This is the K-State Radio Network, and good to have you aboard once again for Agriculture Today. At the occasion of each calendar year's end, we like to get together with the director of the Cooperative Extension Service at Kansas State University, look back on some of the achievements and accomplishments of extension in Kansas over the past year, and maybe a quick glimpse ahead to what's on the plate for 2019 in this case. Along our way is the Director of Extension at K-State, Gregg Hadley. Gregg, what we'd like to do is go through the main pillars of extension work in Kansas one by one and talk of some of the things that jump off of the page to you and as far as the accomplishments in each. But as you would summarize this past year, was it a good one for extension in Kansas?
I think it was a good one for extension overall in Kansas. When you think about our whole goal of going out and helping people help themselves by providing the education that's needed to improve their lives, livelihoods, and communities. Myself and our extension professionals, you just can't get a better job than working here. So it's always a good year in extension.
And extension in Kansas, compared to other states, is as healthy as any other, it would seem.
It would seem. I mean, we all have our difficulties. We all have the budget woes to deal with. But in the end, there are people out there. I think everybody wants to improve their lives, livelihoods, and communities. And so we always have a mission to accomplish, and we work hard to do it.
Well, to remind folks, those 5 main areas of emphasis are global food systems, water, health, developing tomorrow's leaders, and community vitality. Let's begin with global food systems. Of course, that addresses our number one industry in Kansas, agriculture. So much going on under that umbrella. What jumps out to you as some of the high points for extension this past year?
Well, we could really go on and talk about a lot of things, and I'm sure we will leave out and overlook some. But I think the top of the list on everybody's minds is both the financial and the personal stress that is accompanying the farm economic issues right now. The farm economies have been down for quite a long time now. And with that, we've got some services out there that helps people through these times and tries to help them provide information that allows them to have the best decisions that they possibly can make under these circumstances. One of those programs that we have is our Kansas Ag Mediation Services, which allows farmers and lenders or whoever they need to talk to about financial issues can come together in kind of a neutral setting and talk about their financial issues on the farm. And this process has been going on for years, but have been critically important the last 3 years. Essentially, since 2014, the caseload at Kansas Ag Mediation Services has gone up threefold. And so the demand for their services has really skyrocketed. And that threefold is kind of underestimated because, as sometimes happens in statistics, we change the definition of what a case is and things like that. And it's not only that we sit there and help the lenders and make sure that the lenders and producers are talking productively about what to do in the future, but also with the stress. They do a very good job at helping producers if there needs to be some counseling or things like that. They do a very good job at lining up those resources. They do not do that, but their network is amazing, and they're here to help producers.
And they are based on the K-State campus, the service, but folks can inquire about that through their local extension offices and the like.
Yes, and their telephone number is 1-800-321-FARM.
Before we leave the agricultural side, though, that is just a sampling, as you noted, Gregg, of the myriad of things going on, from crop production to livestock production, any number of farm management things going on out there. So it really is an awesome amount of material that's available to produce.
And you think, when you think about the farm financial situation, you kind of think of the urgent thing. There's education programs that are ongoing to help producers improve their farming operations. Last year, the winter calving schools were another example where we had great impact. Over 500 producers attended these meetings, and there was up to 87 to 89% reporting that they were going to change how they went about providing assistance on their cattle operations at calving time.
That's an impressive number.
That's an impressive number. But the thing that's impressive about that number is the fact that we see that number in a lot of different areas of extension. We see a high acceptance of what we're teaching, and I think that has to do with the fact that we provide research-based information to the people that need it.
Talk with us a bit, Gregg, if you would, about another area of emphasis, and it has applications for sure in agriculture, but even beyond that. Water, the availability of water, the quality of water, both prime issues in the state of Kansas, of course.
Yeah, and we do things in the area of both water quality and water quantity. And, of course, out west, we think a lot about our Ogallala and our efforts out there. One of the things that I think is just really, really a good program is our water technology farms. And this is kind of a collaboration between researchers, private industry, farmers, getting together to talk about how can we really look at and investigate ways to make and to conserve every drop of water and make sure that it's getting used to its fullest potential. And there's lots of good work going on there, and it kind of becomes almost a facilitated group of K-State Research and Extension researchers and specialists as they work with the producers. They show the results of different conservation methods and then share it with the producers. And then the producers can sit there and talk back and forth about how it works in a real farming operation. And they get to see it working on a real farming operation. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole lot of excitement on that issue.
Right. And it has generated field days and other activities that have allowed the program to show off those particular traits. So that's a very valuable program, the Water Technology Farms. And once more, though, there's so much more going on in the water area. We have the watershed specialists extraordinarily active throughout Kansas and have for 2 decades now, amazingly enough, and that's a function that has paid dividends.
Oh, I think so. They are great public servants. Kind of their whole premise is to working with farmers to help ensure the water quality of our streams, of our reservoirs, and other water sources there. And so they do great work getting out, testing streams, talking about ways that we can still fertilize, use pesticide in a manner that is cognizant that we have to preserve water quality.
Mm-hmm. And those local extension contacts, agricultural agents in specific, are very much attuned to all of this. And if one wants to know what Extension's up to in either of these arenas, why, that's the place to go.
Yep.
Staying on the agriculture side of the spectrum, Gregg, very briefly ahead of the break, the 2018 Farm Bill has passed. Any aspect of that legislation directly relevant to Extension moving ahead?
Well, we get our federal dollars distributed to both the land-grant universities and Extension from the Farm Bill. There's that issue. The other issue is that we need to help educate producers on the changes in the Farm Bill. Mm-hmm. And then the other part of the Farm Bill that people don't necessarily recognize is that a lot of our nutrition education programs, in particular what's called FNEP, the Expanded Food and Nutrition Extension Program, and SNAP-Ed is delivered through Extension. And this year, the legislature decided that Extension is so good at delivering impactful programs on that, at overseeing those programs, and also evaluating those programs, that they made Extension the home for FNEP and SNAP-Ed programs throughout the United States. That's not to say that other organizations that are involved in SNAP education will not be used. That's not the case. It's just that the administrative home for SNAP-Ed now lies in Extension.
Gregg, if you'd hold on just a minute, we need to take a break. We want to come back then and wander our way into some of the other areas of Extension work this past year that are of great importance to Kansans. So if you'd stand by, we'll tackle all of that in just a few moments.
Be glad to.
Our guest on this first half of Agriculture Today, Gregg Hadley. He is the Director of Extension here at Kansas State University. He'll return with us in a few moments. Stay with us here on the K-State Radio Network.
Agriculture and food systems are the main drivers of the Kansas economy, but must be improved in order to feed the world's growing population. How are we going to do so? Reduce food loss, find ways to preserve grasslands, and help families stretch their dollars. Global food systems is one of the 5 grand challenges K-State Research and Extension is addressing. To learn more, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
We are back now on Agriculture Today. It's our year-end review of Cooperative Extension Service activities in Kansas this past calendar year. And once more, we'll get some thoughts on what's ahead for Extension in 2019 as well. Our guest is Gregg Hadley, the Director of Extension at Kansas State University. Well, Gregg, let's talk about developing tomorrow's leaders, and that refers directly to the 4-H program here in Kansas. And it's hale and hearty for the most part, is it not?
It is very hardy, and we're looking at ways to make it grow. You know, we're still got our traditional community clubs and give youth opportunities there. But lots of times people have the misconception that it's a program that's devoted to farm kids. And if you're not on a farm, you shouldn't be in 4-H. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. You know, I would say, this is my estimate, it's probably not very accurate, but for every one activity in 4-H that is kind of farm-oriented, there's probably about 2 activities that youth that are not on a farm can get involved with. And the key there is all of the 4-H activities and youth development activities that we engage in develop youth, develop their communication skills, develop life skills, all those positive outcomes that we want to see, with the ultimate goal of helping youth to develop to become positive citizens in our society.
Mm-hmm. And there has been, to pick out one example, a very strong accent on science,
yes.
Part of the STEM initiative, as they say, science, technology, engineering, math. But that science component has really taken off with young people.
Yeah, there was a project that went on in Johnson County, for example, that was sponsored in part by Bayer and the National 4-H Council, called 4-H Science Matters. And that group educated youth to come together in teams and to look at food insecurity issues in Johnson County and to talk about kind of the science behind that, and got some very interesting results there. You know, lots of times they say youth think in isolation. But after being engaged in this thing, talking about this program, talking about food insecurity, one of the questions that the participants were asked, do you think about how your choices affect others? Once again, within regards to food insecurity. And 67% say that they now strongly agree with that statement, and 33% said they agree with that statement. And then they started asking them things like, would you like a job that involves science? And 67% once again strongly agreed with that they wanted to pursue a science-type career, and 33% agreed with it. And then they asked, would you like to study science after high school? And 73% said that they strongly agreed with that statement, and 33% said that they agreed with that statement. And so it helps to support what we do in our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools, in that showing youth that science is important, science can be a very fulfilling career, and our 4-H youth development programs help to deliver that message.
And the example you cited there, just one of scores of other very creative ideas going on out there, yes, to bring these themes to the table for young people.
Yes. Our 4-H youth development programs reach out to tens of thousands of youth every year. And it is one of our, if I can say, flagship programs that has always been associated with Extension and always will be. Yeah.
Well, we have these two other areas of activity that we want to highlight as well. And actually, we'll cite an example of Extension work that does encompass both health and community vitality. There's an initiative called the Culture of Health. What's that about, Gregg?
The Culture of Health is what I would consider a grassroots program, in that our agents and our specialists have community conversations and talk to the public about what are your major health concerns in your area. And so this isn't anything that is coming down from the university and telling people what the issue is and how they should deal with it. It is actually starting with the people and saying, in what ways do you think your community can develop a better culture of health? There were 7 statewide conversations that were facilitated by Extension specialists and Extension agents throughout the state. And these conversations led to the development of ideas about how their community can become a culture of health, which basically means deciding how that community is going to improve their health.
And that could be in any number of forms, from nutrition to access to health services, so forth, right?
Exactly. And it's community specific. And so what may be an issue in a county on the east side of the state may not be a major concern on the west side of the state. And maybe they would have similar issues. But you don't know until you ask the question at the community level. Yep. And what has happened since then is that we have had agents and extension specialists apply to a program that offers money to engage in health-related education throughout the state. And so far, we had 30 grants that were submitted and accepted, and there's been up to about $170,000 that will be distributed so that in early 2019, we can start some of these education programs that focus on developing a culture of health in these 30 different counties and communities.
The hope here obviously would be to expand this kind of initiative beyond these 30 counties.
Oh, yes.
At some point.
That is correct. But when you think about the immediate impact, if you can help 30 counties establish a better culture of health in their areas, that's a lot of impact.
Any community leaders interested in that, they can go to the KSRE website and track down more information on that.
That's right.
Very good. ksre.ksu.edu, by the way. Well, Gregg, as we round this out and looking forward now to 2019 and what's ahead, we've been witnessing in recent years the structural changes of extension in a geographical sense with the districting initiative. Any more along that line or any other specific things that Kansas might be seeing with respect to extension's operations?
We have to be able to move forward on those initiatives, and there will be at least one new extension district forming in this next year. Hopefully there will be more. The key is that our society is not getting any less complex. And we need to have specialized agents. We need to have our specialists, and we need to have them available to the communities where they're needed. And so part of my job is to make sure that that talent base is made available to the people of Kansas. And so that's always going to involve some changes here, some changes there, but the end game here is to make sure that an educator and a Kansan is able to link up together so that we can provide the education that's needed for that person to improve their lives.
Well put. Well, looking forward to the new year. Thank you for giving us these thoughts and reflections on extension work this past year and a quick glimpse ahead to what may lie before us in 2019. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you.
Gregg Hadley. He is the director of the Cooperative Extension Service at Kansas State University. And it would be worth bringing up ahead of the break that you can take full advantage of the vast resources of information that Extension provides in publication form out of the K-State Research and Extension online bookstore. You can go to their website, click on a topic in the left sidebar, or you can type in a keyword in the search box, and that'll allow you to thumb through the current publications. Right now, they're featuring write-ups on providing healthy water to cattle and on the merits of whole foods, plus the standards that folks routinely lean on, including the annual Chemical Weed Control Guide, the 2019 version coming out soon, and the Kansas Garden Guide for examples. You can access all of it at ksre.ksu.edu/bookstore. If you haven't looked into that online library previously, we'd encourage you to do so. And we'll be back with today's agricultural news headlines and this week's Stop, Look, and Listen with Gus Vanderhoeven. Still ahead here on Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
You are tuned in to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Welcome back as we move on now to today's agricultural news headlines, courtesy in part of DTN. Several leading U.S. food and farm groups are warning the Trump administration not to exclude agriculture from a new U.S.-European Union trade deal. Led by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, and the National Pork Producers Council, this ad hoc coalition of more than 50 organizations says they will oppose any deal that does not remedy long-standing concerns about EU policies toward U.S. farm products, contending there is little support in Congress for an accord that does not include agriculture. The groups expressed this in a letter sent yesterday to U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer. Now, the letter comes as the Trump administration and EU officials continue to work on the framework for talks over a new deal. The EU Commission is set to receive a mandate from member states early next year that will lay out what issues are up for negotiations. Early signs are that the Europeans are not keen to include agriculture. That's a move that the agricultural interests say could preordain failure of the trade talks, as they put it, before they even begin. The groups call the U.S. trade deficit in food and agricultural goods with the EU absurd, as they worded it, noting that since 2000 it has increased from $1.8 billion to nearly $11 billion. This is not because European consumers do not want American products. As the letter reads, it says it is because EU tariffs and non-science-based regulations deny consumers there a choice. The USDA Secretary shared his thoughts on the proposed change to the Waters of the United States rule during a roundtable discussion on that subject yesterday in Tennessee. With more on that, the USDA's Rod Bain.
So say you are an ag producer who has spent a lifetime doing beneficial work on your own property. When one day, according to Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue,
federal regulator come out and say, here's a summons, you're violating the law, and we're going to prosecute you, we're going to fine you, unless you settle, we're going to take you to court. It's very unsettling.
Which is why the Agriculture Secretary supports the recently announced proposal to redefine and clarify the Waters of the U.S. rule under the Clean Water Act. Secretary Perdue spoke Tuesday before a Tennessee Farm Bureau roundtable on WOTUS, along with one of the principals overseeing the redefinition process, Environmental Protection Agency Acting Administrator Andrew Wheeler. EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are currently taking public comment on the proposal. And as the Agriculture Secretary told farmers and landowners in the audience,
you shouldn't have to face risk when it comes to rules or regulations of your government.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Food companies, retailers, and some major livestock groups have come together to draft a new framework to improve management of antibiotic use in the livestock industry. Food companies and retailers such as Walmart, Tyson, Smithfield Foods, and Hormel joined with pharmaceutical companies such as Elanco Animal Health and Zoetis, along with livestock groups such as the National Milk Producers Federation, National Pork Producers Council, and the National Turkey Federation, to promote practices that would ensure proper veterinary oversight of antibiotic use, would minimize the need for antibiotics through biosecurity, through husbandry practices and disease prevention strategies, and would optimize the use and selection of such pharmaceuticals. This coalition came together through a 2-year series of discussions moderated by the Farm Foundation and the Pew Charitable Trusts. The framework for antibiotic use comes out as the FDA released its 2017 report on antimicrobial drugs sold for use in livestock. Now, that report states that there was a 33% decline, that is, from 2016 to 2017 in the sales and use of medically important antimicrobials in the livestock industry. That decline comes after the first year in which the FDA had prohibited the sales of antibiotics for growth promotion and required producers using such products to obtain a veterinary feed directive first. Sales for such drugs to the livestock industry peaked in 2015 but are down down now 41% since that time. Going back to 2009, when the FDA started keeping track of such medical sales for livestock, sales are down by 28%. The commissioner of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, issued a statement saying he was pleased with the report, but said more work is needed to fight antibiotic resistance. Now, restaurants and supermarkets are working with the meat supply chain to address production concerns. Todd Domer tells us here that the beef industry is complying with those demands through a combination of regulations and voluntary programs.
McDonald's and Costco recently joined a growing list of large beef purchasers making announcements about the use of antibiotics by their meat suppliers. While companies continue to address the issue independently, the focus of this movement is on livestock producers judiciously using antibiotics under the supervision of a veterinarian. The ultimate goal of food service and retail companies is to reduce the total amount used in food-producing animals over the next few years. Initiatives already in place in the livestock industry will help accomplish this goal. The Veterinary Feed Directive has enhanced oversight of antibiotics in animal feed. In addition, residue testing continues to indicate beef producers are accurately administering products according to the label and are meeting product withdrawal times. However, concerns over the overuse of antibiotics in both humans and animals, resulting in a reduction in product effectiveness, are the primary driving factor behind these company announcements. One example of livestock producers voluntarily doing their part to meet consumer expectations for judicious antibiotic use is through their growing participation in the Beef Quality Assurance Program. The BQA program is rooted in a rancher's belief of doing the right thing. The judicious use of antibiotics is part of the goal of producing high-quality, wholesome, and healthy beef. Ranchers, feeders, dairymen, and transportation specialists can learn more about BQA training and certification at bqa.org. I'm Todd Domer.
And when President Trump signs the Farm Bill into law, as expected tomorrow, one of the immediate changes will be an increase to Farm Service Agency loan guarantees and direct loans. Lenders are saying that's an overdue fix, even though many would like to see even higher limits on down the road. The Agricultural Act of 2018 raises FSA loan guarantees to $1.75 million from the current $1.39 million. It also doubles the loan limit for direct farm ownership or real estate loans to $600,000, and it increases the limit on direct farm operating loans by $100,000 up to $400,000. That's a glance at today's top stories in agricultural news. We'll be back in a few moments with more. You are listening to Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen. This is our state, Kansas.
The man was standing there, shaking his head, with a huge grin on his face, and gave a thumbs up.
That's Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University, with comment on life in rural Kansas.
There are many Christmas legends and stories told and shared around Christmas time. I'm not talking about the Bible stories telling about the birth of the Christ child. I'm thinking of stories and legends which share the Christmas glow of giving and sharing. I've several here on the bookshelf which I treasure. Some are children's stories to read, others are adult stories to reflect on, and some are both, for children and adults to enjoy and treasure. The one story I've always loved is Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. My daughter, Jonneke, gave me the special booklet illustrated by Susan Jeffers. That was Christmas 2013. She wrote in front, "Lieve Papa, I can see you doing this. Now we just need to find you the sleigh, as you already have the pony. Love you, Jonneke." What she is referring to is the stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Yes, I could do that, and in my mind, I do. It's not difficult for me to hear the snowflakes coming down thicker and thicker. The horse standing there, shaking its bell and wondering why. Why did he stop here? I want to go on. Trot, plop, 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 in the soft snow and enjoy my warm stable. I know the way, but he stopped me just to listen and celebrate the moment, the place. We can write our own legends and stories. Just to prove the point, I will read you part of an email I received from my daughter Telina a few days ago. And this is a true story. Telina, my daughter, lives in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. All the family members are gathering there and will celebrate the holidays together. Old Amsterdam, with its canals and buildings, is now beautifully decorated, very tastefully and not gaudy. The days are short and evening falls early, and of course people bike or walk. I'm talking about the older part of Amsterdam, the part Rembrandt, the Dutch painter, knew. Here goes the letter. Telina wrote, "I went to search this afternoon for a little tree that was within my budget. Yesterday I was at Lindel's and Joseph's for coffee, and they had a truly gorgeous Christmas tree, what we think of as classic. I could smell the evergreens as I climbed up the stairs. Joseph had done a fantastic job with the lights. I really wanted to have a tree too, however small. It just didn't feel right. So late this afternoon, close to closing time for several of the markets, I headed out to see what I could bargain for. My last stop after 4 others, where I thought this is not going to happen, I saw some very scraggly 3+foot trees sitting in pots. Not quite Charlie Brown trees, but his cousins. I decided there was potential. I looked carefully through the 5 standing there and made a selection. And I asked the gentleman how much he wanted for the trees standing there rather dejectedly. Over to the side. He glanced quickly at them and said 15, meaning euros. I told him that seemed a bit much for trees that leaned and had a rough shape, double crowns, etc. He dropped to 12. I told him I would take one of his hands for €8, so he didn't have to drag it back in and out tomorrow again. He looked at me for a long glance, and must have decided he was tired and cold, too cold to argue. So I got a curt nod. All right. I happily paid him in cash. Then, seeing a pair of pruning clippers on his bench, I asked him if I might borrow them for a moment, since I didn't have one at home. Again, a nod. So I set my little tree up on the bench. It was well over 3.5 feet tall, and a thin tree, but that suited me, as I planned to set it in my windowsill. I turned it, and then, with your voice in my head, carefully bent, clip, and shaped the little tree. Of course, starting by choosing one of the crowns. Slowly, with just a bit here and a bit there, the tree all of a sudden began to straighten up and take form. After about 15 minutes, I stopped. After all, it was a little tree. I set the clippers back on the shelf and cleaned up the branches I had pruned off. As I turned to carry the tree to my bike, the man was standing there, shaking his head and with a huge grin on his face, and gave me a thumbs up. He then helped me secure the tree to the front of my bike on the rack. I told him to prune the others tomorrow morning, and then he could easily sell them all for 15 euros. He laughed and he said, "Yes, ma'am, first thing in the morning." Earlier in the summer at a market, I had picked up some small glass ornaments in red, gold and silver. I bought 2 boxes of lights at a discount store because a tree without lights is a no-go. I just finished decorating my little tree. It looks quite happy in my windowsill. I laughed. That's what I do with the cedars we select for Christmas tree each year on the farm. Once trimmed and decorated, everybody oohs and ahs. It's just a cedar. Looks beautiful. Merry Christmas to all.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. And that caps off our Wednesday edition. As always, we appreciate you tuning in and hope you'll return this same time tomorrow. Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.